Friends, let's kick this off with a little recent history. Over the past many years that you and I have been looking at Hyundais and Kias, we've often agreed, great value, but sadly that value has come from areas you don't see, namely driving dynamics. Well, apparently someone at Hyundai has been watching these episodes and they get kind of tired of me complaining about this stuff. Because if you look recently, what was it, the Elantra Sport we drove, that has a fancy new multi-link suspension that was designed and engineered by the guy who used to run the BMW M division. He now runs driving dynamics for Hyundai. So they're taking this thing kind of seriously. So here's a mid-cycle refresh, the 2018 Hyundai Sonata, and once again they're working on the rear suspension. Now when they changed this car for 15, they made it a multi-link rear unit, so it switched from the wretched torsion beam that we complained about for many years. Now they further have improved it by changing the arms in the multi-link, where they're now thicker, specifically 12% thicker, to make the rear suspension stiffer, but they've also added in new bushings which are thicker, which can handle heavier loads in the vehicle. And well, we're going to find out if it works in the first drive review, but the idea is they're listening, and I guess we have to stop complaining so much and focus on other areas. So you should know this by now. Whenever we have a lot to cover, I tell you to bust out your notebook, your iPad, or your Etch-a-Sketch. We have many transmissions, many engines to cover, so let's just get right to it. This is a stand-in, this is the fancy one. So let's start with the most basic one, and that, ironically, is the biggest engine, the basic one. It's the 2.4 liter, four-cylinder, direct-injected gasoline engine. That puts out 185 horsepower. That comes in at a very aggressive 6,000 RPM. 178 pound-feet of torque. Comes in at a somewhat aggressive 4,000 RPM. Then we move on to, I don't want to say the fanciest one, but something that is very interesting to me, and that is the Sonata Eco. We drove this one already 3 years ago when it first came out. Well, that one continues into 2018, and that one has that wonderful 1.6 liter four-cylinder direct injected gasoline turbocharged engine that we've driven in the Elantra Sport that we like so much. In this, guys, it's 178 horsepower, comes in at 5,500 RPM, but the torque is exactly the same as the Elantra Sport at 195, comes in at 1,500 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 4,500 RPM. Now let's move on to this. This one is the big engine, even though it's kind of the mid-size engine, really. This is a 2-liter, four-cylinder, direct-injected gasoline turbocharged engine. This one is the highest horsepower at 245, comes in at 6,000 RPM. And then there's the torque. This one is the most at 260. This one also comes in at a very low engine speed of 1,350 RPM, stays flat all the way up to 4,000 RPM. Okay, are we clear on engines? Now let's press on to transmissions. This also, you need to get your notebook, your iPad, and your Etch-a-Sketch. Because if I'm counting correct, there are 3 transmissions on offer depending on the engine. So for example, there is a 6-speed automatic with a torque converter that is available for the basic engine, which is the biggest, the 2.4. Then the Eco is only on offer with a Hyundai-built, Hyundai-designed 7-speed dual clutch transmission. We've driven that in the previous one, love that transmission. And then there is this one. This one has a totally new transmission, which is also Hyundai designed, Hyundai built, an 8-speed automatic, but with a torque converter. Okay, I am tired of all the bullets and numbers. Now let's press on to driving dynamics. Okay, so let's circle back to the driving dynamics, specifically the suspension. Because I don't know about you guys, but I'm rather excited that Herr Biermann is now running driving dynamics for Hyundai Group, because if you saw our episode where I talked about buying a $150,000 sports car on Dave Ramsey principles, you know that I've owned 2 BMWs, and that's when Herr Biermann was rolling up the ladder at BMW, so he designed personally the suspension of 2 of my cars. So here, we already talked about some of the changes he made back here. Here, not so much. This is McPherson struts. Now let's focus on the brakes. So let's again go back to the different engines. Remember the 2.4, the biggest engine, which is the basic car. That would be 12-inch diameter rotors here, 11.2-inch diameter rotors here. Now, if you move to the 7-speed dual clutch combined with that 1.6 in the Eco, stays with 12 inches in the front, 11.2 in the rear. However, this one is the fancy one. This is the 245 horsepower turbo, which we will drive in the full first drive review, so make sure you come back for that. This is 12.6-inch diameter rotors in the front, stays 11.2 in the rear. Now we need to talk about the unique, like, secret weapon of Hyundai, and the best way I can put this is this scares the shit out of every other car manufacturer out there, and that Hyundai, well, they have their own steel factory, kind of like in the old Ford River Rouge days. So the advantage is to be able to produce a mass market car at a mass market price, but still bless it with, dare I say, better materials. And in this case, when I say better materials, it's not that it's fancy, it's just lower mass. Like, having their own steel factory enables Hyundai to produce more of this car using high-strength steel or ultra-high-strength steel. And it is technically different in that engineers can use thinner steel in, say, the structural rigidity of the car, thus making less mass, which reduces the weight. So with all that, what is the weight? The most basic version, that 2.4 car we've been talking about, that's 3,250 pounds. And then this one with the 8-speed automatic is 3,527 pounds. So consider the turbocharger, even a smaller engine, and the more gears in the transmission add up to about 216 or 230 pounds, depending on the version you're comparing to. Okay. I believe that is everything for driving dynamics. Let's focus on the interior. Inside, there aren't many changes to speak of, and that is a good thing. And here's why. If you've been watching the show for a while, you know that, like, BMW, Mercedes, a lot of the European car manufacturers, they used to have these, like, driver-centric dashboards, which I love. And then starting in 2002 with the 7 Series, they went away from it. And it's funny how the Asian manufacturers, specifically the ones that had design studios in Southern California, like Hyundai, Toyota, Kia, they started doing these more driver-focused interiors, a page out of some of the Europeans, and most of those design studios are run by people who used to run European design studios. Interesting how that kind of comes around. Think of this as like an open letter to those design studios, and probably some of those in Europe, like Mercedes and Audi and folks like that, really like this. Can we go back to this? Then there's one thing I do want to point out here. It has nothing to do with design. It's more UX and usability. So think about it. You're here with your wife, mother, girlfriend, family member, whatever the case may be. You have more than one phone usually in the car, and you want to charge the phone. Let's say you have a fancy wireless the Qi system. Previously, it was space for one phone. Now, it's space for 2 phones. Well, I'm going to let that charge. It's incredibly hot in this car, so I'm going back outside. Okay, so you and I covered a lot of bullets and numbers there. And before we press on to the full first drive review, I want to leave you guys with a question. And the question is this: how much does horsepower matter in a family D segment car? Meaning, yeah, you could get this kind of a car in like a BMW, a Mercedes, a Lexus, but I mean this kind of stuff. A Hyundai, a Honda, a Toyota. Because look at this. Here is the most powerful one at 245 horsepower, and then we just drove, like one of the last of the Mohicans, the Toyota Camry with, oh man, we got helicopters talking about horsepower. This is very hard for me to focus when there are helicopters doing touch and goes. Anyway, back to what I was talking about with the Camry. It's like one of the last of the Mohicans with a V6 that's 301 horsepower. So that is almost 30% more horsepower than this car. Does that matter in this segment? Does it move the needle? And I'm kind of putting this question to the folks that would buy a car like this. So yes or no, And most importantly, why or why not? And you know what, for good measure, let me know what D-segment car you currently drive. Let me know in the comments below or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And with that, I want to leave you with two things. Number one, please unsubscribe and then click resubscribe and click notifications. This is how much YouTube has screwed up the platform for everyone. So much so, I need to send one of those helicopters after them. And number two, a fun fact, and this is more a show and tell. Just wait there, 1 second, just wait there. You're gonna love this. So Jim came with new toys today to the shoot. Sadly, we don't have a lot of time to play with it, but check this out. A drone the size almost of your phone. If that's not cool, I don't know what is. Until we see you next time, bis später.